Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your weekly look into what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer. This episode is brought to you by Untappd and the Untappd store. That's right, a store online. Use the coupon code podcast to get 20% off your next purchase. That's store.untappd.com. Coupon code is podcast. And as always, remember, like, subscribe, TikTok us, find us on Twitch. I don't know. Do things online to follow us around. Just online, though, or in person. Whatever. Let's see what happens. Or not. Anyway, enough about that. I'll let John take it from here.
Yeah, please join me and Harrison in a Call of Duty contest where we drink beer and try and figure out how to start the lobby. So welcome to the show. We're talking about ESB, of course, the extra sensory board, or as Harrison told me, it may mean English salty beer, which probably would be good. Perhaps you know it as an edible sauce bucket if you frequent McDonald's. However you interpret the ESB, we're here to talk about its role on Untappd today. And as officially as I can determine, this is actually meant to mean extra special bitter, going back to a time when 70 IBUs was unheard of or unimaginable. Right. This beer has a history more confusing than Harrison's shirt collection. And to date, the only perceivable measurement to determine a best, an ordinary, an extra bitter is a mixture of IBU and ABV. So there's some nomenclature confusion, like a double IPA, a 2X IPA, an Imperial IPA. Have I lost your attention yet? If I can wipe the glaze off of your eyes, promise you it'll get a little better. An ESB is kind of like a close cousin to an English IPA, or an incredibly close cousin to an English Pale Ale. They share some lineage with each other and many other beers. This was like a forerunner catch-all style name for most early English beers, and it was maybe ahead of its time. Brewing methods evolved. Brewers became more technical. There was a huge eruption in the UK at a place called Burton-on-Trent. I think it was. Yes. Burton-on-Stoke. So brewers learned to make beer in more creative and different ways, but the ESB was kind of there before that happened. And while most of them still use an English yeast strain to coax the traditional flavor, you can find American brewers putting their own take on this as often as we do. If you like German Bocks or American Ambers, this beer should feel pretty familiar to you. And at the end of this episode, I hope that you're less confused than you are now. But if anyone asks you why you like ESBs, remember that it's a beer that pays careful attention to the mixture of malt and hop bitterness rather than relying too heavy on one or the other. Harrison, is there a badge on Untappd that rewards people for journeying down this very confusing path?
Is there ever? John, have I told you lately you're extra special?
No, never actually.
Well, I'm not doing it now either. That's the name of the badge, John. Come on, be professional. So that's right. There is a badge with some play on words here inside Untappd to celebrate ESBs and English bitters and kind of everything in between and beneath and whatnot. It's called Your Extra Special. And the description is whether you're feeling extra special or extra strong, stopping by the local pub for a delicious extra special strong bitter or English bitter is always a good decision. Try 5 different beers with the style of extra special or strong bitter or English bitter to grab level 1 of this badge. There you have it. And we've got a pretty classic one to start with, I think, don't we, John?
Yeah, we've already featured one very classic one on the podcast earlier. And a lot of these beers, I think, hold a special place for most. Today, we're drinking Morland's Old Speckled Hen. Why is there a chicken in my beer? Harrison might give us a little bit of insight into this.
Little bit.
The Old Speckled Hen, made by Greene King, which is a gigantic brewery business operation in the UK. Yep. This is obviously an extra special or extra strong bitter as it's listed on Untappd. This comes in at 5%. Again, think back to a time when 5% was a kind of a bigger beer. If you're wondering how 5% could be even called strong by today's standards. Overall on Untappd, this beer rates a 3.36 with about 250,000 check-ins. Yeah. That's not bad for a beer style that doesn't have the rageful trend behind it like so many New England IPAs. And Untappd will tell you as Harrison pours it into his glass and prepares to soak his mustache in that.
Look at that. A lot there. A lot of mustache ground up there at the top.
Old Speckled has a full, smooth flavor, and it's very easy to drink. This is why we love ESBs. Its rich amber color and superb fruity aromas are complemented by a delicious blend of malty taste. Toffee and malt combine with bitterness on the back of the tongue to give Harrison a balanced sweetness. This is all followed by a refreshingly dry finish. And we're looking for, again, like hops and malt both having the same kind of volume in that bitterness department. Harrison, how's it treating you, man?
Yes. So if you have been with us for a while, I think on the first episode you and I hosted on Drinking Socially, we talked about what kind of beers would we be, and I made a joke about how it was like an Argyle sweater or something, and I liked English bitters. I don't know. It might have made sense at the time. But I love this style of beer. It's confusing for many. You just did a great job of kind of breaking down, right, this weird history of best bitters, strong bitters, ordinary bitters. Maybe a strong bitter doesn't mean what you think it does. Strong certainly isn't 11%. But we can talk about that in a minute. This is delicious. It is balanced. It's like, and it's fruity, but there's a toffee thing happening. It's not overly hopped. For me, I love this because I can envision being in a pub. There's a fire. There's a man with a million stories as the barkeep.
It's you, Harrison.
Cask master. Maybe it's me, right? Maybe I'm visiting my older self. Maybe I'm having another vision quest. Is the vision quest alert? We don't have a rainbow bagpipe button for that.
Yeah.
But it just takes me somewhere that feels old and classic. And there's just so much flavor in here. And to be, as you said, checked in 250,000 plus times almost right now on Untappd. Certainly, I feel like almost everybody knows about this beer. You should anyway. It's got a great history to it. But this is just delicious. It's something you can drink every day. 5%, but it's got American amber qualities to it, German Bock qualities to it. There's even like old school American pale ale qualities to it. Like it looks like Sierra Nevada's pale ale. Obviously that's more hop forward. There's more bitterness in that, but there's similarities here. Like there are a lot of those same kind of like biscuity, toffee things happening in the beginning of both beers. I love this. And it's actually got more bitterness than I remember. Again, it's not crazy. If you're a double IPA fan, you may drink this and think it tastes like a lager, but I'm getting like that nice kind of those English hops like Fuggles and Goldings. They're very like earthy bitterness. It ends like that, and the dryness really complements it. They kind of complement each other. English ale yeasts are really dry anyway, or they can be, while also still being fruity. That's why a lot of American brewers like them for in New England style IPAs. But anyway, my first sip became a first monologue. This is great. Biscuits. There's some dirt happening in here, but like happy dirt. Like you're a kid in a treehouse running around with your friends. That kind of thing. It just smells like the forest in the fall. It's cool. So anyway, what about you, John? What's happening over there? Makes sense of what I'm talking about?
How does someone follow that? I think to Harrison's point, this beer is satisfying. It's a lager with flavor. It's not a lager, but it has that place where I could feel this fitting into my life. It's one of the, like if Harrison was like, John, I'm going to come over, we're going to barbecue some meat, right? Great. Bring a Pilsner, bring a lager, bring a session IPA. And he shows up with this ESB with a little bit of color on it. And I'm like, I don't know if I can drink these all day. And then one sip in, you're like, that dry finish is beautiful. It makes me want to reach for a piece of cheese, like a cracker or something to go with it. But
cheese, son of a gun.
The beer does a great job just kind of like standing behind you and telling you that you're doing great without being too loud, right? It's not telling you to turn right or turn left. You go where you want, and this beer is like, we're doing great, bud.
Yep. Just sit back in that chair near the fire, eat a whole wheel of cheese, and don't worry about how many calories are in that or what it's doing to your heart. Just that doesn't matter in this moment. It's all about cheese and beer and the fire and telling stories. It's great, really is. And there are a lot of stories to this beer, actually. The history of it's pretty cool. So quick note, you can find this all across the UK in a cask form as well, but it's only 4.5%, so a little bit lower ABV on the hand pump, which is, I'd love to try that one day. But the history of this beer, it goes back a while. So we're talking about Sierra Nevada, 1980. Well, Old Speckled Hen got you by a year. 1979 is when Morland first brewed this. Now, as John mentioned, Morland was actually bought by Greene King in 2000. So now Greene King's making this beer. But this is first brewed to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the MG car factory, which is in Abingdon, Oxfordshire, which is also where Morland Brewery was. There's kind of a great relationship there. Small town, both businesses knew each other well and had for a while. And if you're unfamiliar with the MG cars, it's one of the most filmed cars in the world for like movies. So it's in Funny Farm with Chevy Chase. It's in Austin Powers. It's in Breathless, which was a movie I didn't know. Richard Gere did it. He's like a thief, but I guess he drives a pink MG around all the time. Anyway, it sounds interesting. I don't know. I'm a Richard Gere fan. But it's known as Britain's biggest little car company. So it's like a smaller sports car. But the reason, so cars and beer, usually they shouldn't mix. Well, agreed, but hold on. There's, again, as you said, same town here and a bit of a history. So there was a car, an MG car that was kind of like the workers at the factory used just to like do, trips and quick chores and stuff, drive around in this car that obviously got some miles on it, being used every day by all these factory guys. And so it was all like flecked and covered in dirt and chips of paint and, whatever, just from years of service, and kind of gained a name around town because of the way it looked. Is an old Speckled is what my horrible English accent is. But like,
sound like maybe a factory worker and maybe
sure.
I'll give you that.
I got the black lung. No, it's different. But which translated kind of into the Old Speckled Hen, and it was at first a brown ale. But so that's where the name comes from. This car that was seen around town that everybody knew, and MG and Morland got together and said, let's honor this awesome car that's pretty classic, everybody knows about, with a cool beer named after this car that's kind of like a local legend. So I just thought that was just a hoot. To no hen pun intended. They don't hoot, but yeah, I thought it was a really cool story that, obviously craft breweries, newer breweries have stories about how they were founded and drinking out of bowls in an Airbnb, and now you're a brewery that John and I have talked about. But not just limited to breweries in the U.S. A lot of great stories, a lot of history here, and this is one that I love and thought was great. You have a kind of a local lore, local legend that now everyone in the world can enjoy in its beer form. So that's what we're doing tonight. And now I just want an MG to drive around town and pick up beer in and then drink that at home.
Chores. Mm-hmm. Spotting the old Speckled. Cool. Yep. Like that would, I feel like that would be a modern day. If you worked for Google, they'd be like, yeah, you can drive around in the, I don't know, 404 error, Ford Explorer, and you can go do some chores in between your work.
Yep. Exactly right. I love it. Yeah.
It would work.
What's a hen? The thing that makes the eggs. So yeah, but cool history, delicious beer. And just, I'm glad we're drinking it and enjoying it, because it's one, if you haven't had it and you're a beer fan, you should. It's, again, ESB is one of those styles people don't know what to do with. Here, in the States, you don't see it a lot, but It's different than a pale ale. It's darker, obviously, than the classic pale ale, and it's less hopped, but it's still you said, it's balanced. And it's just something that makes you slow down. It's not trying to blow you away with any crazy anything. It knows what it is. It's been the same forever. There's some kind of invisible experience in there that's translated from that history into the glass that I feel like I'm picking up on. Maybe it's just the air in this room or the heat outside and the lack of water I've had today.
You have ventilation where you are, Harrison?
I don't remember. Got a fan blowing, but it's the same air. The air hasn't changed. It's getting hotter and thinner by the moment.
Well, since Greene King has boosted the production of Old Speckled, and Harrison pointed out that this is going to be available to probably over half of the population in the world by now.
I think so. Like 47 countries, from Australia to the United Arab Emirates even. It's in 355 milliliter bottles, 500 mil. It's in cans as well. I've seen it in like basically 16 ounce or 500 mil cans around, which is really cool too. Make it last a little bit longer. So yeah, definitely seek it out if you haven't. And it should be relatively easy for you to find.
And so, with this ESB and the ESB being so steeped in English history, that's not a tea joke, but it was. How many? I know there's not a lot of ESBs. I can think of a few off the top of my head, thinking of American brewers and beers. But how prolific is this badge on Untappd, Harrison? Is this probably not as well earned as like the Haze for Days? But how are we doing?
It's doing well. You're right. It's not. I mean, as we've kind of seen, the IPA-centric badges really lead the way on Untappd in terms of unlocks. But this one's doing really well. So far, more than 268,000 unlocks of your extra special or your special badge, which again, all you have to do is try 5 room beers with the style extra special, strong bitter, or English bitter. And the highlights here are kind of what I expected. Like the classic ESBs with a couple maybe little surprises in here, but the number one is London Pride from Fuller's. So really, I don't know, when I think of beer and ESBs, I'm thinking of Fuller's, I'm thinking of Morland or Greene King now, I'm thinking of Abbott Ale, like some of these Boddingtons, obviously, which we had on the show before. The Nitro can always has a special place in my heart. And they're all on this list. I mean, the one that kind of surprised me maybe, but really shouldn't. I love this beer is Honker's Ale from Goose Island. So
nice.
They brew an ESB. And forever, it was really easy for me to get that around Christmas time. So that became like as we talked about, my dad's a big brown ale fan. I like the hops more. And that beer was one we could both sit back and enjoy. So cool that that jumps in the top 5 of the world. Relatively compared to all these other breweries, some of them are hundreds of years old. You have Bombardier in here, more Greene King stuff. Goose Island in the mix with Honkers, which is a cool American interpretation of this. So a lot of history here, a lot of big breweries from the UK letting it be known that this is their jam and they're killing the ESB game. But I've been lucky to have a bunch of these, but always looking for Doom Bar from Sharp's Brewery. That's on here as well. That's one of the ones that so many pubs that I talked to for Untappd had that beer on hand pump, and like every picture, it looked like the best beer ever. It had a cool logo on the actual card on the hand pump itself, and I was like, one day, and that's on this list as well. So that's really the big one for me that I want to try and hunt down and hope it lives up to the image I have in my head.
I'd like to hunt down another Boddington.
Yeah, and we can do that. We can find that. That's a mission we can accomplish.
But that's a pretty cool list. Generally, a lot of English brewers on there taking or helping people earn the ESB badge, which is twofold now, helping bring families together during the holidays and also having a rough day. Maybe your Zoom call got disconnected and you were on mute accidentally or
all day,
whatever. Like you had to go into work and you didn't want to raise your hand. Drink 5 ESBs and your good friend Untappd will let you know that you're also special. I mean, that's like That's
nice.
a double reward.
That's nice. Nice when your phone tells you something that's not your battery's dying or your bank account's empty or your football team lost. It's good when the phone alerts you that, some good news. Speaking of good things and this badge, how are we doing, John? How are you doing on the extra special badge, you extra special person?
Probably as good as anyone listening to this podcast is going to assume. I'm firmly rooted in my level 1. So by definition, I am special.
You are.
The last level up actually came from Bonningson's Pub Ale.
Yes.
Which is sad because that means I won't get to drink more of it to keep leveling it up. I've got some work to do on this beer style for sure. And every time we do a podcast like this, it lets me know, next time I'm out at that place with 40 taps, I'm going to look for an ESB instead of, my typical beer that I would go to. What about you, Harrison? Are you also at level 1?
I am at level 4, Ooh. Which I was hoping I'd be a little higher, but for me, this almost falls in the same category of German lagers we talked about before, where we both drink a lot of them, but from the same 4 breweries or the same 4 German lagers. So it's hard to make a lot of excuses, but just laying it out there, just talking facts. But I will say that I kind of recently have been going out of my way to enjoy the American craft brewers version of this. And I've gotten a couple, either the kind of sister to this style, the milds, or ESBs from the brewery Dissolver out in Asheville, North Carolina. And so their ESB, they did nothing but love. It was great. That's what the most recent check-in that helped me level up this badge was from Dissolver. Just a delicious, very classic. I think it was like 3.8%. It was low ABV, crushed it. Wish there was a 25 pack. My first one, though, which is pretty cool, this took me back memory lane. I looked through my check-ins to see on that badge what helped me get to level 1 of this guy. And it was a beer called There and Back, which, if you remember, John, it was out of Sierra Nevada's Beer Camp collab box. They used to do those. I think the first year it was like 12 different beers, 12 different collaborations. They were all in bottles. The next year it was like a mix of bottles and 16-ounce cans, which no one had done that, have a variety pack that had cans and bottles in it, and it was all collaboration. So Sierra Nevada killing it. But this one was 2014 collaboration with New Glarus, and it was basically just a classic ESB, the name There and Back, kind of poking fun at how many planes, trains, and automobiles it takes to get from Wisconsin to Chico, California, where Sierra Nevada is. So I remember that beer, or certainly that box, but that was a cool place that I've started and so far gotten to, although for tonight it'll change. Done a lot of my work on the ESB badge with American breweries, which is interesting.
Yeah, one trip to London and you'd 2x your American. I don't know how to say the words.
A lot of work.
But I do want to ask you kind of a pivotal question at this point in the podcast, Harrison. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna, because I know based on some of the things you've talked about on this podcast, that there's a good chance you're going to give me a long answer here. So I'm going to make this a challenge. I'm going to make it a would you rather challenge, and I'm going to give you 3 minutes to summarize your answer. Okay.
Yep.
So at 3 minutes, I'm cutting you off. If you haven't already given, you need to sell me on this. Would you rather, Harrison? Would you rather? We're talking about English history and beers. We live in America. Let's make it easy. Would you rather coffee or tea? Go.
Coffee. Time.
1 second.
No, okay. So this is a big one, John. I'll keep this as brief as I can, and please cut me off. But this is like waffles or pancakes big, Stallone or Schwarzenegger, ketchup or mustard. This is one of those pivotal would you rathers. Love tea, grew up drinking tea. I'm surprised I'm as tall as I am because of how much tea I had at a young age. But maybe if it was coffee, it'd be worse. But I am one of those guys where every day I wake up at like -5 and I need coffee just to get to 0. And that's sad and probably something we should talk about more openly as a society, what caffeine is doing to us. But tea has it too. I feel like it just doesn't have quite the hooks that the coffee does in me. So if I have to pick one, I'm picking coffee. Tea's great. Love an afternoon cup of tea. Green tea, great. Matcha tea latte from Dunkin' Donuts. It's mostly sugar, but green is the Hulk's whatever. Also great. But man, it's just that cup of coffee in the morning. It's like, I need it. I'm a basic dude. I need that cup of coffee. If I said tea, I'd just be an idiot, and no one would make it past 8 a.m. in my house if tea was what was getting me out of bed.
Tea's the answer everyone probably wants to give.
Working to tea.
We're honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
We've still got 2 minutes left just about, so I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. You mentioned Dunkin' Donuts. If the whole world was at your disposal and I said, Harrison, we need to grab a cup of coffee before the next podcast, where do you take me?
Wawa. Wawa. We'll have a knife fight in the parking lot and with the owner, and then or the franchise owner. Then we'll grab
definitely getting a hot dog while we're there,
or a sizzly, which is a breakfast sandwich inside 2 pancakes, John. Which I know other places do, but they're not as big as Wawa's. Just sitting there. That's a checkout item. That's not. I would like a sizzly, please. And then a human makes it. They're just stacked next to the counter. People are grabbing them. I'll grab a napkin. Oh, and I forgot my sizzly for the day.
Pick 2 of these up.
Yeah, exactly right. I'll do so. Yeah, sizzlies and coffee from Wawa, and we'll make it until our hearts give out for sure. That'll be that's a no-brainer. But everyone's probably scratching their head.
Wawa's what, like a northeastern or eastern, Middle East?
It depends. There's a lot in Florida, and then the map is interesting. It like kind of starts in Jersey, goes to Virginia, skips over North Carolina and Georgia, and then Florida's full of them. Yuengling follows a very similar path, which is unrelated, but maybe it's still curious to me. But yeah, we'll go to Wawa. We'll grab some sizzlies and some hoagies. And
have they worked with some breweries and done like one of their own beers too?
They have, yeah. So actually, my old brewery in Yosemite Creek brewed a hot dog beer for Wawa, or I think it was Wawa. Gosh, it could be Sheets. I may be opening up a small war. Okay. And then 2SP brewed a beer for Wawa that it's a coffee stout, I think. And then another brewery did a fruited sour that were like those peach circle candies. It was that peach beer. Rings. Yeah, peach rings. Thank you. So they have. I mean, Wawa. Oh yeah, Wawa. I joke, but I mean, if I die in a Wawa, don't be sad. Know that I died probably mostly happy.
Holding your sizzly,
right.
Which I'll probably pick up from you. And
that's right. They'd still be fine days later. It's great. It's a hearty meal.
So Wawa, even though we've done a good job, you've made me hungry and desiring a trip there.
Good.
I want to be
going. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about Nashville, Tennessee. I was there recently, and I want to use that experience as an opportunity to feature our verified venue highlight of the week. We're going to I went to Nashville, and it'll probably be a while before I get to go back. But if you're there, the beer scene, obviously everybody should be thinking Bearded Iris. And of course, shout out to Bearded Iris. They put Nashville on the map for a lot of people. But a long time ago, there's a brewery called Jackalope. If you used to watch America's Funniest People, you remember the Jackalope nuisance that was part of that funny TV show. Jackalope Brewing in Nashville, Tennessee is a verified venue. And while I was there, I was trying to score some local beer. I think they had a crawler station in Nashville Airport. If I had more time, I would have investigated. The beer in that city was something they were really proud of. And Jackalope was on draft at a lot of barbecue places I visited. Their artwork on the cans is gorgeous. I even saw you would see people wearing Jackalope swag around the city. So I want to give them a shout out. There's a bunch of breweries in Nashville and Tennessee that you should make a point to visit if you're traveling. But Jackalope, founded in 2009, so definitively old by American craft beer standards. female founded, which is great. I love celebrating that. And it makes my wife really happy when we get to go visit a place like that. I think that's awesome that you wouldn't know that, of course, but it's female founded. The ranch is their second venue. They actually outgrew their first place and opened up the ranch, which is verified on Untappd. And they just launched distribution into New York. They do some direct to consumer in Vermont. Maybe in a non so distant world, you'll be able to pick them up on the Osner app through Harrison. But I picked up some cans to share with friends. The only thing I'll say is if you're going, make sure you check their Untappd page. They're closed Monday and Tuesday. Everyone needs a day off. They chose the worst 2 days so that you can drink there all weekend. Just don't try and show up on a Monday. But they're also super committed to the environment. Harrison was doing a little bit of research on some of the processes they put into place to help reduce climate change. Was that fair to say? I'm not a scientist.
Absolutely. I mean, they're huge into sustainability. Tons of, from very, again, straightforward approaches, local ingredients, a lot of local hops from the Glenlevin farm. Their beer, Tennessee Wild Woman Ale, actually contains a yeast strain harvested from a local sage flower, which is really cool. They're also the first brewery in Tennessee to utilize CO2 recapture in their kegging, which is pretty cool. I've seen and worked with one system that of CO2 recapture. It's great. I mean, there's tons in the air. If you're paying for it all the time, you don't need to be if you invest correctly and realize that. And they reuse so much stuff. All their water comes from a local river, and they actually reuse about 930 gallons per brew cycle. So nothing is really going to waste. Even the plastic cups they use, they're plant-based, and they fully decompose in 6 months. So they're doing great stuff on the beer side of things. They're doing great stuff beyond the beer. I was lucky to have Thunder Ann from them, which is one of their pale ales that you can find more regularly. I thought it was awesome. It was a great beer. So they're talking the talk, they're walking the walk, and that's really great to see that they're going many extra steps than what is necessary to keep their community, the environment, and by association, all of us, as healthy and as happy as they can be. So we're around for a long, long time to drink tons of Jackalope beer. So hats off to them. And speaking of beer and great things, John, it's that time again. What was your best beer of the week?
Easy answer. Weird label, weird artwork on the can caught my eye right away. Beer from Rotunda Brewing up in Pennsylvania that comes to me by way of a good friend that visits Pennsylvania sometimes. Beer called For the Love of Max. And it's one of those beers that's kind of a beer for a cause.
Got it.
Much better than a t-shirt for a cause. This is a beer you get to drink. All the proceeds go into resources for children. It's embarrassing that we still have problems like this in the world. So I want to send a heartfelt and special thank you to Rotunda Brewing for helping to promote some awareness, all while making an IPA featuring pineapple and tangerine that was delicious. Ooh. I'm a huge fan of these type of collaborations. It's a win-win in my eyes. Harrison, what about you?
Yeah, so I dipped back into the old New Anthem Brewing pond. It's been a little bit since I've had a beer from them. I enjoyed Thought Police, which is an IPA featuring Centennial and Citra hops, as well as a few others. But it'd been a little bit since I had one of their IPAs, and I just forgot how just crazy packed full of hops they are. It's amazing. Well, but it's also still very drinkable. It was kind of a little bit of a mind puzzle where I was just like, wow, I can tell this is thick and overpowered with hops, and there's probably 1 million per barrel or whatever. But also here I am drinking it like it's the Sunny D, and I've been working outside all day, and I'm just dehydrated. Like I downed it probably appropriately fast, but still delicious stuff. If you've had a really hoppy beer, a really bitter beer, I challenge you to go find New Anthem somehow and drink that, because like I said, it's been a bit since I had one, and I've had a lot of beer, and I'm blown away by just how hoppy those friggin' things are. Chock full of it while still being drinkable. Again, it's not like cloying, you're not having hop burn or any of that stuff. They like ride that line, kind of like a great hot wing where you're like, whoa, I don't want to, end my life, but but I'm right there. I'm right. This is making me think thoughts I don't normally think. Kind of like a roller coaster. You're terrified, but having a good time at the same time. I don't know what I'm talking about. Not important. But great beer. Seems like we had a good week, both of us, for beer, new breweries. Certainly tonight, going down memory lane. Got to, beer's memory lane, or shared memory, I should say, of all beer fans drinking a pretty famous ESB. And just imagine John and I moving around in a small little MG car, waving in town and on the way to the pub. That's how we'll retire. But check in on us in 20 years. We'll be in, northern England in a small town at a pub, just doing
driving
whatever.
On the wrong side of the road.
Well, we are right, wrong, right. Who's to say? But
Sure.
Again, make sure to follow us online, all those normal places. What's happening next week, John?
Big show next week. Big show. We've got Shelly and Eric. I'm going to say Desmarais, and I'm pronouncing it the poor French way. We're going to find out how to pronounce her last name next week. Shelly and Eric from CLS Hop Farms, helpful creators of the El Dorado hop, and Alexandra Knoll from Three Weavers Brewing. So we've got 3 people joining us on the show next week. We're going to talk about El Dorado hops and why they're so tropical and magical. This is a show you don't want to miss. We'll see you in 7 days.
That's right. Until then, cheers! A little bit left. Down the hatch.